USS Cambridge is a Tier 8 premium American cruiser and one of the new ships that was added to the game in the July 2026 update. I think I'll say right off the bat that this ship is fantastic, but the method for obtaining it is not fantastic at all. So unfortunately I don't think I can recommend it for that reason. We'll talk about the method for obtaining it a little bit later. But first, before the action starts in this rather short battle, I'll show you the commander build. We're running Captain Janeway at the helm. She is, of course, a Star Trek collaboration commander, and I believe she'll be available again on July 6th, along with all the other Star Trek content. She maybe is not going to be the best commander available out of all of those Star Trek collaboration ones. I would say that honor probably goes to the IJN Borg Queen. But if you've got a few extra doubloons lying around, assuming you can just buy these commanders straight up for the usual price of something like 5,000, Janeway might be worth it. I think she's particularly good for the Cambridge on account of it only having 6 guns, because her base trait does a number of things that I think are useful in that context. It increases damage against battleships and cruisers, for one, and then it increases or improves cruiser sigma when shooting at destroyers by 3.6% at the level I have Janeway at. And then her unique skill in the last row, it's called Precision Strike. It increases cruiser sigma against enemies with more than 50% HP, and then it increases cruiser AP damage against enemies with less than or equal to 50% HP. Plus, she's got the Ingenious skill in the first row, and the Beyond Range skill in the third row. So you can take Ingenious, not necessarily for the targeting indicator that you see there, but also for the turret traverse. You can take that, and you can take extra range on the main battery guns as well. I think both of those things are pretty useful for the Cambridge on account of it having only 6 guns. So that way you don't really feel the 6-gun syndrome. I think even without this build you probably wouldn't, because these guns are pretty accurate, but still, I think Janeway is a good way to go. But you could use somebody like Norm Scott, and I'm sure still have some success. So the Cambridge is sort of like a down-tiered Alaska without the utility and without the armor. This thing has 42,700 HP, which is maybe not the highest HP pool ever, but keep in mind it has a massively improved heal, which I think we'll probably use at some point in this battle. This repair party restores 853 HP per second for a duration of 20 seconds, and it's not quite as good as something like the Minotaur's Royal Navy Super Heal, for example, but it's enough to get back a few bars of HP if you end up taking a lot of damage. And you probably will if you don't position this thing correctly, because it does have a 27mm bow, stern, and deck, so it can even be overmatched by things that overmatch 27mm from plunging fire at distance, which is not ideal. However, the belt armor, the whole thing is 30mm, and that can of course bounce a good deal of high caliber battleship AP. Anything with 457 will overmatch it, of course, but if we were to angle against the Schlieffen and not have to worry about his secondaries, well, there's one ship we could defend ourselves against. And again, even if you do take damage, you do have that improved heal to fall back on. Plus, I think the maneuverability helps out with avoiding damage, because this thing has a top speed, and this is with the speed flag, keep in mind, of 34.6 knots. So it's probably something like 33 knots, not terribly fast. I would run the speed flag for the little bit of extra. But the turning circle radius is 750 meters, and then the base rudder shift time is only 8.7 seconds. I'm not sure what it is on the commander build, but we've got the rudder shift down to 7.8 seconds. And that kind of maneuverability, I think that's excellent. But of course, the best thing about the ship is the main battery guns, which you've already seen those take out the enemy G9. And of course, these are 6 Alaska guns, 305mm in 3 double turrets. With this build using the range skill on Janeway, we've got a range of 17.1, Base is 15.8, maybe a little short, so I would probably want to buff that somehow. But the best thing here, I think, is the reload time on this main battery. It's a base reload time of 12.5 seconds. We're running just the reload mod, and we've got it down to 11.2. But I believe at one point I had Mimbelli inspiring the build. I'm not exactly sure what or why I changed it, but with him, I believe the reload was something like 10.6 seconds. And having a 10, 11-second reload on 6 Alaska guns that are fairly accurate, because these things do have 2.1 Sigma, although we have it buffed to 2.23 with the Janeway build. Well, having that amount of firepower with that quick of a reload is pretty good, especially since the AP on these shells hit for 8,900 damage max, and they of course have the improved ricochet angles. Minimum ricochet angle is 60, guaranteed ricochet angle of 67.5 degrees. You saw against the angled Salem there that, they do have a little bit of a problem when they're that steeply angled, and you might have to switch to HE in some cases like that. If you do, the HE has a maximum damage of 4,300 and a 27% fire chance, but AP is definitely the main shell here. And in that little sequence with the Salem, we didn't do a ton of catastrophic damage to him with the AP or the HE, but as you can see, he's moved now, and he's exposing broadside to our position while we're concealed behind this island. So since he's giving us broadside, he's going to be much easier to take out. You never want to give broadside to the USS Cambridge. Same thing as if you were fighting in Alaska. There's a double strike between the Salem and I think the Aki that we burned down with the fire from the HE. We won't mention the secondaries, although this thing does have them. They certainly wouldn't be worth building into. As for the AA, there's actually only 2 sets of AA mounts, and somehow that gives this thing an aggregate AA defense rating of 92. It's got 12 127mm AA mounts that only do an average damage per second of 91 with a 5 km firing range, and 20 76mm guns with a 406 DPS value and also a 5 km firing range. So I suppose this thing can probably shoot down some planes. As for the concealment, pretty decent. We've got the concealment mod and not Kondo, who's the cruise, Mikawa, as one of the inspirations. So we're at 10.1. So what we've got here is a fairly stealthy, fairly maneuverable cruiser with incredible main battery firepower of the Alaska, just less guns. And I find it extremely fun to play. The only bad thing I could really say about it is with destroyers, because of course this doesn't have the same utility as Alaska. There's no radar here. There is sonar, and it does have a 5 km ship acquisition range. So I suppose in certain situations you could use it to, say, push a destroyer smokescreen and reveal them. But you've only got 6 guns. Now the HE does hit hard with the over 4,000 alpha damage, but with 6 guns against a maneuvering destroyer, good chance you'll miss a lot of shells, and so this is probably not the most efficient cruiser in the world for taking out destroyers. What it is good at is dealing really excellent damage to both battleships and cruisers. Against cruisers, it's of course absolutely lethal, and against battleships not angling properly and not respecting its AP power, it can be a real danger. Here's our 4th kill of the game on the USS Delaware. And this is a bit of a blowout, but that leaves an enemy Preußen left at the sort of the back of the map. And I think in this last sequence here of the battle, you'll be able to see that this AP even has good pen against something as heavily armored as the Preußen, even at longer ranges. Don't think it'll really be citadeling the Preußen, but it'll do some good damage to his broadside. Now, the unfortunate thing is the only way to obtain this ship is, of course, by taking a chance on a random bundle chain. The bundle chain is called Steel Eagles. It's the one that you would buy if you wanted to get any of the new US alt destroyers in early access. The bundle also contains, in addition to the Cambridge, the Tier VI Hughes, Tier 7 Osborne, Tier 5 Kane, and Tier 8 Christopher. So Cambridge is just one of 5 ships that could possibly drop from this bundle set, and there are 75 bundles in the set, each costing 750 doubloons. So in order to guarantee that you obtain the Cambridge, the price would be 75,000 doubloons. Of course, if you were to spend that, you would also get the Hughes, Osborne, Kane, and Christopher. And you may get lucky. Of course, the bundle does show you, when you open it up on the store, what it will give you for the first time. And if it happens to say Cambridge instead of something like Independium and Global XP, and you can get it for 750 doubloons, I mean, go for it. That would totally be worth it. But you probably will get unlucky, and it'll drop sometime later in the bundle chain, most likely after you spent more doubloons than the ship is actually worth. So for that reason, I can't recommend it, and it's really disappointing that they would put a ship like this in a bundle chain and make it so unobtainable, because I really think this ship is excellent, it's fun to play, probably won't be for everybody, and I don't think it's massively OP, but if you're decent at playing heavy cruisers, this would be an excellent ship to have in your port. Unfortunately, I just can't recommend it because of the way for obtaining it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.